Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you pretty much late night first impressions and review of Fire Force episode 1. Yes, I'm talking about this one, guys. It's one of those things where at pretty much the very moment I had heard that this particular series was getting an anime, I knew instantly. I pretty much had to. I pretty much had to. I basically had. I had to throw my hat into the ring and just kind of and start reviewing this series because I've been reading the manga and the manga for anyone who isn't reading it is definitely like it is a must read. It's a must read in definitely in pretty much terms of not even just the shonen genre, but in terms of manga, it is definitely a worthwhile read. If you haven't started reading it yet, I do recommend that. And other than that, let's just say I pretty much have a little bit of somewhat of a little bit of a vested interest, I guess you could say, in pretty much how in this series and how exactly it's going to turn out. With that being the case, though, let's pretty much talk story. So the story and the setting of this. In terms of the setting of this story, it takes place in an alternate world, Tokyo, where at any moment in time humans can just kind of burst into flame, and after that they're pretty much reborn as fire demons through a process called human combustion. And the only ones who can combat and exercise these creatures are the Fire Force companies. And of course, at the center of the story is the Fire Force Company 8, whose mission is to find and exercise is to find the cause of the phenomenon, is to exorcise the demons and given the extra task of basically of pretty much finding the pretty much cause of the phenomenon. And I want to make it clear for pretty much anyone who for anyone who is a little confused by that pretty much that little small detail. When I pretty much say that Fire Force Company 8 has been assigned to in order to find the phenomenon, in order to find the cause of the human combustion phenomenon, what essentially that means is that every single Fire Force company it pretty much has. Every single Fire Force company has at least of course one extremely specific mission that's pretty much assigned to them in order to keep the peace of Tokyo or of this Tokyo world, and in Fire Force Company 8's case, that particular mission is to find the phenomenon, and each Fire Force company, like I said, each Fire Force company has a specific mission, has one specific mission that pretty much is assigned to, and yeah, that one is pretty much Fire Force Company 8's mission in order to find the phenomenon and exorcise the demons. If this is and of course if I don't know if. And for pretty much anyone who's probably scratching their head and thinking that pretty much this pretty much specific plot of like exorcising demons and whatnot is sounding familiar, then yeah, it is, guys, because the pretty much series Fire Force, for anyone who doesn't know, is based off the second manga series of pretty much Atsushi Okubo, who's pretty much who's basically the same guy who was responsible for the first work he did, which is basically Soul Eater. And just in this episode alone, you can definitely see you can see the resemblances between Fire Force and Soul Eater. But as someone who is reading the manga, one thing I can tell you guys is I can tell you right now going forward is that you'll pretty much find that Fire Force is one of those cases where the series keeps it keeps a lot of the best parts from it keeps a lot of the best parts that was in Soul Eater, but at the same time it also it also leaves out or reworks the stuff that didn't work so well. Excalibur. Yeah. But yeah, actually, one thing I will say too is that just from the first episode, you can definitely see that pretty much the series also has a little bit of a religious undertone, but but if anyone's wondering if it's gonna get too preachy or too or just in your face at any point, trust me, you don't have to worry about that at all, because one thing that is very interesting in terms of the religious subject of this series is that it's played into the story in such a way where it is never going to feel like it's being shoved in your face or preachy. It's basically what Prince Kubo has done is he's just kind of is that he's integrated in such a way where it's basically a pretty much natural part of the story, and that's it, which I can kind of appreciate. And the idea of and one thing I also really like about this series, obviously, as we see just in this first episode, is the idea of making firefighters the main heroes. It's one of those things that I feel that it really helps. It really helps a series like this. It just in something like simple like that. It helps the series have a little bit more of an identity, and it helps it just really kind of stand out more. Also, and one funny little bit of trivia I've heard about this. I've heard about this series with basically each kind of chapter I've read, and the more I've gotten involved in it, is that apparently this series was conceived from just a little conversation that Prince Hiro Mashima and Prince Atsushi Okubo had one day when they're just kind of joking and messing around about what happens if you combine their series together. Like, it was, yeah. So I guess Atsushi Okubo and Hiro Mashima, at least from the way I hear it, are like friends or something like that. So it's kind of one of those weird things where I don't know whether or not you like or hate Fairy Tail. You could kind of say that it does it does have a part to play in basically how in Fire Force's inception almost. Like, if Fairy Tail didn't exist, then we probably wouldn't. If Fairy Tail didn't exist, or at the very least, if Atsushi Okubo and Hiro Mashima weren't friends, then we wouldn't have gotten Fire Force. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a fun little detail for that. Yeah. Now let's talk pacing, because let's talk pacing, because this is the one thing where I'm. This is one of those things where I just need to be 100% straight with you guys. Like, I'm just gonna be straight up front with you guys. The pacing is probably the main thing I'm going to be the most anal about when it comes to reviewing this series, because, as I said, with Fire Force, it is a series that was created by Atsushi Okubo, who had also made Soul Eater, which as we know, every time mentioned Soul Eater, for the most part, all people remember about that series is that it didn't receive the greatest adaptation by Bones. Like Studio Bones were the ones who handled this Soul Eater anime, and it didn't receive the greatest adaptation. In fact, as much as I love Studio Bones, that is in fact the one black mark on the studio's record I'll never forgive. And to that end, I will say that at the point where I heard that pretty much this series it was being done by pretty much David Production, who are the same guys who've done the JoJo animes. Coincidentally, an anime package came, and I bought all the first 3 parts of JoJo. But when I heard it was being done by David Productions, it did kind of give me a little more optimism than. I did have a little bit more optimism, but I was still wary going into this. But knowing that, and so far, based off this first episode, it's a good start. I mean, I can't deny that pretty much with the current with this first episode, that they definitely cut out and reworked a few small things here and there, but otherwise it was a very solid adaptation to start with introducing us to the characters, story, and world, where No, where I'm confused and slightly concerned, however, is that apparently we're pretty much, this is gonna be a pretty much four core adaptation, and from what I heard, that apparently means we should it's going to be we should probably expect it to be around 48 episodes in total, and so in general that means we're gonna get 48 episodes in total. So and so far it's one of those things where when I'm hearing that it sounds like a decent starting point, but at the same time I do worry it might be a tad excessive because it'd be a tad excessive because I imagine that it's one of those things where we're pretty much the more we're pretty much the where in terms of the more that's pretty much adapted, then pretty much the longer we're gonna have to wait for another season or something like that. Um, and the greater the risk of them catching up could be. Like, again, with pretty much 48 episodes, it pretty much sounds like at least a decent starting point. But yeah, I think by the end of this, it's probably going to be one of those cases where we're probably going to be waiting a little longer in order to get like a second season or something like that. Um, in order to get a second season, and that's assuming that again it doesn't go anything of the Soul Eater route. Um, but yeah, with 48 episodes, I think it'll be fine. But yeah, it's just a big question mark for me. And in general, I'm just hoping. In general, what I'm kind of just hoping is that Fire Force it becomes what pretty much Soul Eater couldn't be almost. Like I want Atsushi. I respect Atsushi Okubo as a mangaka so much that I want this guy to get the pretty much anime adaptation he deserves. That's what I'm hoping just comes of this, honestly. Um, and yeah, but I, but yeah, I just hope he gets the anime adaptation he deserves. With that said, let's talk characters, starting with the main character, who is basically Shinra Akabe, who, as we learned through the episode, joins Fire Force Company 8 in hopes of learning the truth about in terms of the events of the fire that pretty much killed his family. And the one thing I really like about Shinra, even when reading the manga, is how truly selfless Shinra is. I mean, yes, obviously with Shinra he has this goal of being a hero, but it pretty much but with him being a hero, it serves the greater purpose of pretty much finding out what exactly happened to his family. Like with Shinra, we get the sense that even though he wants to be a hero, it kind of serves the purpose of just him kind of getting closer to in order to the possibility of learning what happened to his family almost. So, and one thing, I mean, and really when when you get down to it, like with pretty much Shinra, the only things he pretty much wants to see is that justice is probably served. As like, obviously with this series, we're definitely going to be facing a bit of a fine line with Shinra's character of when justice becomes revenge and when revenge becomes justice, but at the same time. But I think one thing that can be said also is that with Shinra, he genuinely believes that he wants to see justice served. He wants to find the person who basically did who he wants to find the person who's responsible for the death of his family, and just kind of see and understand what pretty much why they. And pretty much find out as to why his family had to die and what and just what the circumstances were of it. Like, so yeah, you can see he's definitely, in some respects you could say that he definitely is a shonen protagonist, but there are also a couple of slight differences with him as well. Which I enjoy. Now, and of course as a shonen main character. Now if you pretty much, now of course I'm not gonna say he's perfect. Like, if you want to look for the baggage in the character, we can definitely see it in his backstory of him being blamed of him being blamed for the of him being blamed for as being the one who killed his family and being called a demon for it. But even in those small instances of him being called a demon, you can see you definitely see what pretty much really weighs on Shinra isn't so much him being called a demon or him being blamed for what happened, and more that with Shinra he just kind of blames himself and he just kind of blames himself and that he wasn't stronger and he wasn't stronger, so he pretty much could have saved his family. Like, he pretty much sees what happened to his family as something that could have been prevented if he was just stronger, and he wants to be a hero, so that pretty much won't happen again. So I really like what Shinra's character is and where we're going with it. Now, talking about the other characters in Fire Force Company 8 is interesting, because right now we pretty much only had pretty much 2 chapters adapted, and so far with the small fraction of the main cast that we got right now, and it's interesting because right now we've only got introduced to a small fraction of the main cast. Small fraction of the main cast that we're actually going to get, but in some respects, like with the characters we've gotten introduced so far, a lot of them are kind of stock characters, but at the same time, I feel that within this one episode, I feel that everyone can at least find something about each character. You can find at least one thing about each character you can like, and it's one of those things where as the series goes on, you definitely are gonna get to know them more and learn about these characters. But I think the biggest strength, and this is something I've found with Okubo's work in general, is that a lot of what makes the characters what makes the characters relatable and just fun to watch is how they all react off each other and pretty much how they all react and how they kind of like interact off each other more than anything else. Like, he really knows how to do a lot of the team dynamic stuff. So yeah, it's through that we're gonna be able to get to know them more. And yeah, time to talk about the art and animation of the episode, because yeah, it was pretty. I'll say this right now, it was pretty damn good, at least in terms of a first episode. One thing I will say, and maybe it's just because it is the first episode, I did notice that there were definitely a lot of noticeable areas in the episode where the character models suffered from basically that from tried and true faceless disease. And from an animation standpoint, that there were a couple times in the beginning where the camera animation was a little static compared to the manga. Like, the camera animation, at least in the beginning, it didn't really try and really do a whole lot in order to stand out. But it never tried anything in order to like get different angles or different shots or something. Mostly in the beginning, mind you. But yeah, so in that case, a lot of the angles, at least in the beginning of the episode, were very static and not very, and just didn't try very hard in order to like get like unique shots or anything like that. But like I said, majority of these complaints I have were in the beginning of the episode, and once we got past those from small hurdles, it was the episode, in terms of art and animation, it very quickly switched gears, and when it did, I not only thought that the art was colorful and the animation was engaging, but there was a very emotional aspect to pretty much both the art and animation, That when it's brought together, it almost feels like the animators and artists knew exactly what they needed to force it, what to focus on in order to elicit a reaction from us. Like a lot of the shots just pretty much looked, a lot of what it was, it just looked amazing. And it felt like it felt like a pretty much genuine experience, almost like we were pretty much there and experiencing everything that was going on with the characters almost. Um, but yeah, guys, that's my very very long review, first impressions of this series. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Analyst at Crunchyroll. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.